Shaman King was a 2001 anime series based on a manga of the same name. I was too young to appreciate it when it came out, but about 10 years later when I started getting into anime, it was one of the first series I watched. The show was originally dubbed by 4Kids Entertainment, who were sort of synonymous with shit during the golden age of YouTube because of their tendency to over-edit their anime dubs. This probably wasn't actually their fault, as they had to deal with networks like Fox who demanded they make their shows more kid-friendly and, in the case of Shaman King, more America-friendly. It seemed that Fox simply didn't think kids in the English-speaking world could mentally process characters and concepts having Chinese and Japanese names, apparently because they were worried that American kids might start speaking Japanese and grow up to become kamikaze pilots. So the studio had 4Kids change most of the names, which attracted widespread derision from fans of the series. The dubs were not allowed to contain anything that could be construed as bad language or innuendo, and any mention of death or killing was replaced with vague references to being destroyed.
Don't do it! They'll destroy you!
We'll all be destroyed anyway.
But we are going to destroy you!
You will be destroyed. Just because we don't like the X-Laws doesn't mean they should be destroyed.
Kind of like how in Yu-Gi-Oh! The bad guys all got sent to the Shadow Realm in massive air quotes. I'm also fairly sure that when I watched it as a teenager, I noticed that blood had been edited out of the 4Kids dub when compared to the original. But the bottom line was that it was insultingly child-friendly because Fox are a bunch of fucking pussies. I'm going to be talking about the dub in this video, so if I start talking about voice actors and such, I'm referring to the English, not the Japanese. Got it? Good. Right then, so a quick overview of the story. A notably short school student named Manta, changed to Morty in the 4Kids dub to make him sound American, and because it rhymes with shorty, is walking home one night through a graveyard when he encounters Yo Asakura, a boy who reveals he's a shaman, meaning he can talk to ghosts. The next day, Yo transfers to Manta's school and the two become fast friends. Sort of. At first, Manta is really standoffish towards Yo, but they bond when Yo uses his shamanic powers to fight off a gang who have vandalized the tomb of a samurai warrior called Amidamaru, and also beat the shit out of Manta for, I don't know, looking like a gnome. Short jokes aren't my thing, but the guy's literally 1.5 feet tall judging by the fucked up scaling in this series. The basic idea is that shamans can put ghosts inside their bodies and use their combined skills for combat. Later it's revealed that once every 500 years a tournament is held for shamans to fight it out to determine who will be the Shaman King. The winner will be able to bond with the King of Spirits or the Great Spirit or God, I don't know, it goes by many names, and shape the world in any way they wish, but gunning for that title is an extremely powerful shaman who wields a fire spirit with a really pointy dick. His vision is to exterminate all the non-shamans to create a better world, so he's basically Shaman Hitler. But he loses a lot of his intimidation factor when you hear the name 4Kids gave him. You see, his original name was Hao, but for some reason known only to whichever coked up Fox network exec was in charge of naming things, his name in the English version is...
Zeke!
What the fuck kind of stoner name is that? He sounds like a Californian surfer dude, not a terrifying villain. What makes it worse is that he's 1,000 years old, reincarnating himself every 500 years, and according to the dub, he was still called Zeke 1,000 years ago. Anyway, Yo's journey to the tournament mostly involves him befriending the people he fights. The leader of the aforementioned gang called Ryu, who was changed to Ryo for the dub, a snowboarder from Hokkaido called Horo Horo, whom the dub renames Trey Racer, and Yo's arch-rival Ren Tao, whose name got changed to Len, or Lenny, for some reason.
What'd he say to you, Len?
Boy, I wonder how Lenny got such a twisted view of the world.
I don't really see why they changed that. Ren sounds like it could be a Western name, but whatever. He's also Chinese, but has an English accent for some reason. At least, I think it's meant to be English. Him and his sister June speak in an accent that I assume is what you get when you ask someone to talk like an English person, but their only point of reference is Austin Powers.
Face it, you and your samurai are no match for us.
Personally, I don't know what the big deal is. It looked rather awkward to me. Do you think I could have your snowboard? I always wanted to learn, but I was only allowed to ski.
What makes this even more bizarre is that later we meet a character called Lyserg, who is apparently from England, but the voice actor for him doesn't even try and do the accent, which is actually better. Other characters include Anna, Yo's fiancée, even though he's only like 13 or 14, who's a massive fucking bitch, but it's okay because we're left to assume that she's just on the rag or something. Attitudes towards women weren't great back then, people. In fact, in a lot of places they still aren't. Tamao, who's renamed to Tamara, and Jocko McDonnell, who's always referred to as Chocolove in the Japanese version, but I think this may have been a nickname. Anywho, I don't really want to spoil the ending, so I won't talk too much more about the plot, but the basic idea is that all the characters want to be Shaman King for their own reasons. Horo/Trey wants to save a species of spirits from extinction by protecting their natural habitat. Gang leader and outcast Ryu wants to create a world where everyone has a place they feel like they can belong. Jocko's thing is that he tells shit jokes that infuriate his friends, and his goal if he becomes the Shaman King is to save the world with laughter. And I think Yo just wants to be Shaman King so that Brad or Trent or Zeke or whatever the fuck his name is can't. Also because Anna has a lust for power and is making him do it. As far as I'm aware, the TV series ran ahead of the manga, meaning that they had to do the same thing Game of Thrones would end up doing years later, and finish the story with just a vague guideline. It was because of this that 20 years after the original release, Netflix decided to do a reboot of the series so that the ending could follow the manga more closely. The story starts off almost exactly the same, it's just a bit more condensed, and since Netflix is a streaming service that isn't at the mercy of a fussy network, the reboot was free to have blood, swearing, innuendo, and perhaps the most satisfying thing being that all the characters now have their original Japanese names. All except for Jocko, because I think in the English they thought the name Chocolove was a bit weird. Interestingly enough, if you watch the Japanese version on Netflix, you'll hear them refer to him as Chocolove, but the subtitles say Jocko, like they wanted to do away with that name altogether for English-speaking audiences.
The
reboot is a great spiritual successor to the original. It even takes place in the late 90s, meaning it's now a period piece. It especially captures the essence of homoeroticism that ran through the original that the conservative networks probably didn't pick up on. Nearly every scene contains a dude with his bare chest out, and what I love even more is that the reboot isn't even trying to be coy with it.
Isn't Ren just super cute when he acts like that?
Did you say cute?
In the reboot, Yo is voiced by a woman, making him sound closer to how he did in the Japanese version.
I feel exactly the same as I did before, except maybe a little bit hungrier. Can you just once lose your cool and get angry or something?
The hot springs are ready now, so please feel free to take a dip.
The same goes for Hao, and notice I'm not calling him Zeke anymore, who is now voiced by Erica Mendez, who played main protagonist Ryuko Matoi in Kill la Kill. Original Ren, or Len, was originally voiced by Andrew Rannells, who's probably best known as Matthew from Big Mouth, or for his starring role as Elder Price in the Book of Mormon. It's kind of ironic that he's known for his amazing voice, but Len had one of the worst voices in the entire show.
I am very relaxed. Don't I seem very, very relaxed?
It's not his fault though, they really shit the bed by asking him to do an accent, but fortunately, they did away with all that shit in the new version, and Ren's new voice sounds younger, but also much cooler.
Well, would you look at that, I see even someone like you trembles simply at my approach, Yo Asakura.
Finally, you're getting angry. Which, by the way, is how you're supposed to be when you're fighting. Not smiling like a goof as if we were playing video games together.
Another voice that's changed is Ryu's, a sort of weird Elvis impersonation, which is a massive departure from his campy voice from the original.
As usual, Miss Anna, I believe you have made a fabulous decision.
You know, I heard Chief Yo returned to Zuma.
We are cool. We are happening. We're what's up.
I mean, just look at the beating we took back there. Take a look at this joint, huh? What's with this place? Every time we turn a corner, there's corpses everywhere we go.
This is the part where you tell us you are not serious.
I'm not sure which one I prefer, to be honest. They're both fucking ridiculous. I don't think it really made that much difference in the end. Apart from those voices, most of the voice actors from the original 4Kids dub have reprised their roles from 20 years ago, which is great because it gives them a second go at something that didn't go too well the first time. A redemption of sorts. Michael Sinterniklas voices Horo/Trey in both the original and the reboot, and was also the voice actor behind Mikey Simon in Kappa Mikey.
I make everything smell like me!
We're so ready. Let's get it on, dude.
I never agreed to this. Why do I have to team up with some stranger I don't even know? And newsflash, Ren, haven't you realized by now I can't stand you?
The dialogue in the reboot feels like it's spoon-feeding quite a bit, but I actually think that might be intentional because combined with the returning voice actors, it really does feel like I'm a kid again watching a cartoon like Yu-Gi-Oh! Except now it's a little bit more adult, and they now do cool things like have a Japanese intro theme written by the same band who did the original Japanese themes in 2001. Another thing that 4Kids were notorious for was having English theme tunes for their series, and while the Shaman King one wasn't terrible, it didn't really compare to... well, you get the point. At one point during Yo's qualifying fight with Silver of the Patch Tribe, one of the original theme songs actually plays at the end. Like I said, it's great for nostalgia. When I watched the original series, I always thought that main character Yo actually had the worst reason for wanting to be the Shaman King, and Horror probably had one of the best. And it's possible that someone working on the series thought so too, because in the reboot, when Yo hears Horror's reason for fighting, he says,
Right in the feels! Okay, Horror, you can be the Shaman King!
What's wrong with you? Have you lost your mind?
But didn't you hear that story? He's such a good guy!
Oh, sweetie punch!
and I think it's just hilarious. Although the best line I've heard from either series is this one from the original.
It takes much more than a fatal blow to bring me down.
There are also some parts in the reboot that I think are intentional in-jokes. For example, in the original, Lyserg abandons his fairy spirit for an archangel spirit, and it's a fairly important plot point, but in the reboot, when he gets his angel, Yo asks what he did with her, and he's basically like, she's right here. What, you think I just abandoned her? Everything in the reboot looks much nicer in terms of visual appearance, and many of the characters have had their personalities fleshed out as well. Yo was always this kind of cool, collected individual who worries about nothing, and that's still the case in the reboot, but now we see he's also extremely introverted and lonely, and loves trains. I mean, it's just really charming. Jocko is also interesting because despite being the comic relief character who gets mocked and ridiculed a lot, we find out that he used to be a violent gang member in New York, and he's carrying around the weight of the people he's killed. They do the same for Anna. Turns out not only is she deeply tormented by her ability to read minds, forcing her to bear the brunt of everyone's hatred and anxiety, but it's also explained that she tries to push people away to protect them. Those are just a few examples, but pretty much every character gets a heartbreaking backstory in the reboot. In fact, the whole thing generally has a more serious vibe altogether, swapping one-liners and wisecracks for clenching fists and talking in serious voices to the point where it actually sounds a bit ridiculous. There are comedic moments in the reboot, they're just not as constant as the 4Kids dub where the tone had to be kept fairly upbeat even in the serious moments.
You are not eating anything today! That's right, Zeke! Your stomach is bigger than your... Wait, that's not right!
Trade, let someone who knows how to trash talk do the trash talking.
I was getting there, Len! Zeke, we're gonna kick your 1,000-year-old butt!
Good, Trade, that's more like it.
At the end of the day, it's a quirky, slightly exposition-heavy adventure about the power of friendship. The reboot just does it slightly differently. The 4Kids dub knows it's cheesy, so it doesn't try so hard. That's not to say there aren't intense moments in the original, especially towards the end. There definitely are. I do genuinely think that whether you've watched the original series or not, the Netflix reboot is really worth the watch. I'm really glad Shaman King got the reboot it deserved, and I'm looking forward to seeing if any other series that were previously micromanaged by overzealous networks get a reboot as well. Well, with nothing else to say, I will leave you with these parting words of wisdom from the series itself.
Where are the cards?
Oh?
The cards, the note cards I had my speech written on.
You said you memorized your speech, so I thought that...
You thought what?
I threw them out.
Words of inspiration to come at another time.